The Canadian government made a move on Wednesday to increase the competition in this country's wireless market. An upcoming wireless spectrum auction will lift the restrictions on foreign investments in small wireless firms in Canada. That, of course, could bring down prices for consumers.
Joining us now in Vancouver is Steve Anderson, Executive Director with OpenMedia.ca, an organization that campaigns for open and affordable telecommunications in Canada. So your organization has been pushing the government to change the rules for the upcoming wireless spectrum auction, and you wanted them to give independent carriers a better opportunity. Why?
Well, because Canadians pay some of the highest prices in the industrialized world for cell phone service and also for internet service. And basically there's wide consensus in Canada that our telecom market is broken and controlled by too few companies, and that Canadians pay too much. And so we called on the government to be bold and to make sure there was a level playing field so that new entrants and small cell phone players could compete effectively.
That's a good point, Steve. You know, we do pay very high prices in this country when you compare us to other similar countries and similar markets. Are you pleased with the changes that were announced by the government on Wednesday on this file?
No, I mean, it's not the worst decision they could have made, but in terms of the way the story was introduced, I wouldn't say that this will necessarily introduce competition in this country. I think there's a very good chance that one or two or more of the independent players that we currently have will go away because of this. I think that it feels like a lobbyist first approach instead of a Canadians first approach. It feels like they listened to the lobbyists and decided to try and make them equally happy on the different sides, whether they be big telecom companies or independent players. But you know, if they were putting Canadians first, they would have acted boldly to support new entrants. They would have had a strong rural build-out and things like use it or lose it clauses, which would make sure that the telecom companies actually use this digital infrastructure that we're selling to them.
Steve, there are three big competitors in this country, obviously talking about TELUS, Rogers, and our parent company, BCE Inc., Bell. How much is needed for a company to build a long-term evolution network, or what they call LTE, to actually compete with the big three?
Yeah, this is an interesting point. We actually published a report about a little over a week ago that actually had a really good plan for the government. So they have no excuse for not doing the right thing here, because we laid it out really clearly to them. But to your question, the incumbents, the big telecom companies, don't need more spectrum. They have some of the, in terms of other countries, they have more spectrum than the big telecom companies in other countries. So they don't need more. That was just kind of you know, a ruse for them to try and trick the government into giving them more spectrum. So they don't need more, in fact. And that's why we're arguing for
well, they might not need more, but they might want more, right?
Oh, sure, they want more so that they can block competition. Because if they're sitting on this digital infrastructure, then obviously no one else can use it, and that means the competitors can't use it. So that's what they were hoping for. And I would say, like, this is kind of a middle, kind of muddling sort of decision. It's not the worst decision. They didn't hand over, you know, all the spectrum to the big incumbents, which is what they wanted. But it certainly is not a bold step. And you know, if our prices don't come down in Canada in the next few years, you know, we have a majority government here, and you know, they'll have to answer to Canadians.
I just need to clarify something here. So explain to us, when we're talking about opening it up to foreign investors, does this not mean that other companies from outside of Canada could potentially be allowed into this country and set up their own networks and bring about greater competition, which would in theory lower the prices on the market for Canadians?
In terms of the foreign ownership part, yeah, it is true that that new companies from outside can come and set up, or they could invest in one of the smaller independent players. So that's certainly possible. But I think the rules of the game in terms of spectrum that they set, I think that's where in particular they haven't been bold on this front. But certainly the lifting of foreign ownership could introduce new players, or certainly you know, more capital to the new players.
All right, Steve Anderson.